So I thought long and hard before I did this. You guys know everything's on social media, right? I have videos, I'm not going to name any names, but I have videos of people that were taken by a third party not doing FireGuard correctly. I have a video of a person who I could not identify, but it's a member, standing in front of the B-17 where the pilots can't see them, all 4 engines running, on his phone. So I'm going to beat you up about this. For those of you who don't know, Mike Demler and I run the ramp here all winter. And we routinely fly multiple airplanes during the day. So all of this is based on our experiences here and the dictums of our airbase leader, who was an operations officer. Oh, not working? Okay. On tour, on a fly day, there's going to be one person in charge of the ramp, or one person for each airplane, depending on how the GOC wants to set it up. That person is in charge of the ramp. Frequently it's a GOC. If Marty's out there, it's going to be Marty. If I'm out there and I can get away with it, it's me. But that person directs all ramp activities. He's going to get a lot of help. He or she is going to get a lot of help, but they're in charge. So the first thing you do in the day, probably before the crew brief, because you should sit in on the crew brief, is what the first crew brief of the day, is discuss the launch and recovery procedures with the PIC. How are you going to go out? How are you going to come back in? Is this where you want to park? Where do you want to be? Do you want any wing walkers, etc.? Once you've determined that, and that's probably going to be the same for every flight that day, unless something happens to change the ramp configuration, then you're going to brief the ground crew and wing walkers if necessary. Tell them what they're going to do, where they're going to be, what you want them to do. On fly days, you should not have anybody on the ramp except for the passengers, the crew members, and the passengers hangers-on, the people that come to take pictures. And as Mike said in his one of his briefs, etc., we do want to let people come take pictures of people boarding the aircraft. But once people are on the aircraft and you're getting ready to start, everybody gets moved to the safe area. In general, you're going to move them outside the fence if that's the way it is. Some ramps you're going to just have to set up a barricade or a line of cones, but you're going to move all those people to the safe area before you even start. Remove any items that might be blown around by prop wash. We were in Penticton about 3 years ago with both airplanes, and I had a guy standing outside the fence right behind the B-25 holding his kid. And I said, "Sir, you don't want to stand there." He says, "I can stand wherever I want. I'm outside the fence." I said, "Okay, you've been warned." They moved, we were carrying the metal drip pans. And whoever moved the drip pans didn't move them far enough away. So of course we start the engine and the drip pan goes right up against the fence. And of course, as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich will always fall peanut butter side down or side there. The guy looked at me and I said, "I warned you." If the trailer is close to where you're launching it, it may be necessary for you to close the trailer window or even the doors if you're going to get a lot of prop wash. Trust me, you don't want to have, if the trailer's here and the door's here and the B-17 is going to go like that, you want the door closed. So just be sure you're ready for that.
Mike?
Yeah?
One comment. Make sure that the flight suits are secured too. Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Get flight suits blowing over all the time.
Oh yes.
Or get bungee cords with the fence.
Yeah. So if you're the fire guard, you always wear leather gloves. I carry leather gloves with me all the time on tour. Pre-position the fire bottle. Okay, so this has changed a number of times over the years, but this is the proper way to do it. The fire bottle should be positioned outside the wingtip on the safe side of the airplane. Anybody want to tell me what the safe side is?
Inside the turn radius.
In what?
Outside the turn, so you don't get blown over.
No, you want it on the side of the aircraft where the aircraft will turn away from you.
Correct. On the inside.
That's the outside.
No, that's the outside. You want it on the outside of the turn, not the inside of the turn. Because if you're on the inside of the turn, the airplane is turning towards you. Right? So, and we'll demonstrate it out there this afternoon. Situational awareness. Be looking around. Be aware of what's happening on the ramp. Make sure there's no extraneous people out there. Make sure there's not an airplane taxiing in that wasn't expected. The starting sequence for the aircraft, for the B-17, it is always 3, 4, 2, 1. You always start the inboard engine first, followed by the outboard engine, then you go to the other side, inboard and outboard. The reason for that is that if there is a fire, you don't want to have an outboard engine running and you're going to try to help put out the fire on the inboard engine. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, up front, there's not a damn thing you can do if there's an engine fire on the B-17 or the B-25 or the C-47. The crew's going to handle it because you can't use that fire extinguisher anywhere that it's going to do any good. On the P-25, typically it is 2 followed by 1, but there are some pilots have different ways of doing it, so you should ask the PIC, which engine you're going to start first. Excuse me. It's embarrassing to be standing on the wrong side of the airplane and have the pilot going like this. Right? C-47 is always 2 followed by 1. Everybody knows how the engines are numbered, right? Left to right, outboard to inboard. So if I'm the B-17, I'm facing that way, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Position yourself where you can see the PIC or the SIC, depending on which side you're standing on. If you can't see them and they can't see you, nothing's going to happen. Get the chocks removed. The chocks are removed when you are given the instruction by generally the SIC to remove the chocks, because they're going to get in, they're going to get comfortable, and then they're going to set the parking brake. Sometimes they get to talking and they forget. So I usually will stand up close where they can see me, and if it looks to me like they're getting ready to start the starting sequence, I'll say, brake set, like that, and then, oh yeah, sure, set the brake, and you can remove the chocks. In general, if you're doing back-to-back flights on the B-17, we'll only put 1 chock in between flights, unless it's really windy. So you put 1 chock in, generally on the side where the fire bottle is. On the B-25, the standard process is unless it's really windy, if you're getting set for another flight, we just put in the nose chocks. Right, Mike? Yes. So you don't have to run around and remove all the chocks. It's unnecessary. So chocks removed. Generally, and it depends on the pilot, some co-pilots will say, okay for power, clear for power. If they say that, yeah, clear for power. Sometimes they'll just turn the power on. On the B-17, and actually on the 25 too, you can tell if power is on when the rotating beacon comes on. If that rotating beacon is on, that means there's power on the airplane. We'll go through the signals here in a minute. The pilots will give you signals. They'll tell you, so let's say we're on the B-17. The SIC is going to hold out 3 fingers, and that means you're going to start number 3. Then he'll hold 4 fingers. When both those are there, they'll either go give you a thumbs up or tell you to go across to the other side. We'll go through that in a minute. You want to watch the aircraft at all times. Your job is to make sure nothing unusual is happening. Okay? And then once all the engines are started, you want to cross back over to the safe side of the airplane, and when you're given the thumbs up, and then stay there until the plane taxis off. Some pilots will look for a wave off, like if it's Chris Scheich, he's going to go like this. You say, yeah, sure, you're good to go. Travis will just taxi off. So that's true. Okay, hand signals. So we have a limited set of hand signals. We don't marshal. We start the engines and we park the aircraft. That's what we do. So we do a minimum set of hand signals, and they need to be consistent, particularly if we have a pilot from another unit that's flying the airplane. So, starting the engine. So we're going to start number 3. The SIC holds up 3 fingers, or point at the engine. You point at the engine, make 3 circles with your hand, and put your hands down. This looks dramatic, but it's confusing, right? Because once you tell the pilots that the signal you're giving is, yes, it's clear, it's safe to start the engine, the prop's clear. That's all you're telling them. They're not looking at you at this point. They're looking at the engine and the switches and everything. So they will, in fact, start the engine. Yeah.
There is one person looking outside where the engine starts, that is the count.
Yeah, but he's not looking at the fire guard.
No, he's not. He is looking outside.
Yeah, and he's looking outside, but, well, I was going to actually get to that. How many of you know how you start, and David maybe, how many of you know how you start a radial engine? It's, yeah, right, 2 people and 5 arms. You got a primer switch, you got a starter switch, and you may be mucking with the throttle or the mixture, but basically what you'll see is they'll engage the starter. They'll watch through 7 blades, 6 blades, 6 blades, and then they'll turn the mags on. The engine will start, and it's starting on prime, right? Because when the engines are turning, they're not getting enough air flowing through the carburetor. So the primer switch just basically dumps raw fuel into the blower, and that gets distributed. So the engine will start, it'll fire, and then you'll hear it almost quit and start again, depending upon the pilot, because they're switching over now from the primer to the throttle and mixture. These, because you're priming the engine, if it's cold, or if you're Travis, you may overprime the engine. I will show you on the B-25 where it comes out, but if the engine is overprimed, you're going to see fuel on the ground, and you're going to see a lot of fuel on the ground, especially on the 25. That's called a wet start. Thumbs down. As long as there's fuel pouring out of that engine, thumbs down. The pilot may or may not look at you. They're busy trying to start the engine, but you're telling them they've overprimed. It's a wet start. When the fuel quits leaking, finger sideways, okay? Fuel's no longer running out. You do that for a little bit, and then usually they'll start it. Sometimes if they overprime, they'll stop the starting sequence, wait a few minutes, start again.
Question like that here.
Yeah.
Pilot gets the signal, agrees they want to start. What if it's not safe to start cranking the engine?
You keep your hands down, or you do this. This actually means stop, but you can do this. But normally they'll wait for you. Normally they'll wait for you to give the okay to start. If you don't give the okay to start, there's several signals you can give, none of which are standard. I mean, if one of the signals I give, if there's something wrong that I don't have a signal for, I'll hold my nose and point. That was actually taught to me, no, that's actually was taught to me by a marshal. In the rare event that you have an engine fire, typically it's going to be an exhaust fire, a stack fire, and it's not going to be a big problem. But if so when you're starting, the SNJ is notorious for this. If you're starting, sometimes you'll see a flash of flame. That's okay. That's just because he's overprimed it a little bit. But if you see extended flames, point to the location of the fire and make a figure 8. Continue doing that as long as there are flames. The crew will deal with an engine fire. They'll pull the fire bottles, or sometimes it'll just blow itself out from the prop wash. But your indication is simply to tell them there's a fire. If they shut down the engine, do not approach with the fire bottle until all the props have stopped turning. And like I say, you're probably not going to need to use the fire bottle unless there's fire on the ground. So if there's fire on the ground, use as appropriate. If they're evacuating the airplane, assist in evacuation, especially assist on the B-17, on the B-25, you want to assist the crew chief in front, the load master in the back will take care of that evacuation. All right, I call it recovery. I know it's a Navy term, but we're basically parking the aircraft. You did discuss with the pilot how he was going to approach and where you're going to park, right? Okay. Brief the ground crew that you're going to have. With the B-17, hopefully you've got at least one, if not two other people to take out ladders and chocks. B-25, it's a little easier because the doors are going to get open from the inside. Have chocks and ladders ready to take out to the airplane. Move everybody that's now walked out on the ramp back to a safe area. And stand out there and put your hands up so that they know you're the one parking them. Now, you should have a safety vest on, but that tells the pilot who their marshaller is. Next. We use a minimum number of hand signals, right? I know there's people watching and recording this for social media, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's not so good. That same video that I said where I saw somebody standing in front of the B-17, later in that video he videotaped the worst B-17 landing I've ever seen our people make. It was pretty bad. So just use the hand signals that we use. So what I do is park here. So what I'll do is I'll stand where they're going to make the turn, because typically they're going to come past you and make a turn, or they're going to come in and make a turn. So you stand in front of where the airplane is going to turn. So I'm standing here, that means the airplane is taxiing in from one side or the other and it's going to turn towards me. Once that airplane turns, walk to the left side of the aircraft, because the PIC is supposed to be the one taxiing. Move to where they can see you, because now they've made the turn and they've got their line. Move to where they can see you, and use your arms like this to indicate how far it is until they stop. Once you're at the stopping point, don't do this. This means emergency stop. I do put my hands together and squeeze my fist, and they'll stop. We have a little game we play out here with the B-17. When you go out on the ramp under the C-47, you'll see a white square and a white T. Our goal is to get the tail wheel on that white square.
Mike, you might want to explain to anybody that might be new why they can't see in front with the tail dragger.
I will demonstrate that when we get out there, but yeah, with the tail dragger, right, you can't see in front because the nose is in your way. So,
It's not meant to stand direct in front of any aircraft, whether single wheel or not, because if brakes fail or something like that, he's coming right at you.
that is correct. I actually have a slide on that too. But the key is you always, if you can see the pilot, he can see you, or she. We do have a female pilot. Yeah.
One, pilot will dictate how slow, how quickly you brake based on how quickly you push your hands together.
Yes.
If you're not doing rapid,
Yes. No, you're.
he's gonna slam on the brakes. That's what you told him to do.
Yeah.
So he is watching you, the rate at which you pull your hands together over your head, the rate at which you brake the airplane. So unless you wanted to make an emergency stop, nice and slow, predictable
Good point.
Two is we do not always park the planes in the same place where we're gonna be on static. That's the spot. Sometimes we're out further, when we're a hot ramp, and that's the light, FBO wants us in tight.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, other things can change on the ramp.
Talk about just because you think you're going to the same spot, you may not go to the same spot. Get with the GLC, and get with your pilot, make sure you confirm, you're going to go to this spot, last spot.
Also, by the same token, please don't cut them up like this and then pull. Because we're not quite there yet. Done a little bit too fast, get to here, now we got about, I don't know, it's the longest sequence I've ever seen that. And then all of a sudden, you're like,
Yeah.
once you get to about here, make sure you make it nice and gradual without having to stop.
So you should be able to judge by, the speed at which they're taxiing as to how long it's going to take to get to that spot. It comes pretty naturally to you. But yes, you want to be smooth movements. We don't want the pilot to have to slam on the brakes unless it's actually an emergency, because it's hard on the brakes, hard on the tires, hard on the pilot. Okay, so you're parked. They shut the engines down. If it's the last flight of the day, they're going to scavenge. So if it's the last flight of the day, they're going to park, they're going to set the parking brake, and they're going to run the engines at, what do we scavenge at, Mike? What RPM? Yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be like 1,500, 1,200 RPM, so it's going to be greater than an idle. The time they scavenge is, the B-17, I think they scavenge for 90 seconds, and 25 is less than that. So you're going to want to stay away from the airplane while they scavenge. Then when they shut the airplane down, there's still going to be power on the airplane. The engines are hot. There's such a thing as a hot start. So you want to stay away from the airplane until the pilot or the SIC, whichever side you're on, says switches are off. Sometimes they'll give you a thumbs up, but what they should say is switches are off. That means the magnetos are off, the chances of the engine restarting accidentally are there. Then you can approach the airplane, place the chocks, bring out the ladders. It's the last flight of the day, wipe down the aircraft. Actually, in between flights, sometimes we'll go out and wipe down the aircraft if there's a lot of oil. One thing, and correct me, Mike, if this is wrong, if you're going to wipe down the airplane and you see an excessive amount of oil, what you think is an excessive amount of oil, don't wipe it off until the crew chief has a chance to look at it. Right. I mean, you'll figure out once you start wiping down the airplane what the normal amount of oil is. But if you have any questions before you wipe it off, point it out to the crew chief. No public tours until the crew chief and the loadmaster indicate that the plane is ready for tours. The loadmaster is going to be preparing the back of the B-17 or the back of the B-25 for tours. The B-17 requires a little more work because you got to put the seats up on the 25. Basically, the loadmaster's got to go back and put the spider up to the tail. But you're going to have people that have been sitting out there waiting to go through the airplane. The minute they open up the ramp, they're going to run out and want to go in the airplane. And you got to say, in the ramp, just say no, wait until the airplane's ready.
Mike,
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate, you did say docking the aircraft, but only one docking.
Say that again?
You only need one dock in between flights.
Yes.
You only put 3 docks when you're for the day.
One pair of shots.
Not a pair.
Yeah, one chalk set, yes. Unless the PIC tells you he wants all the chalks with the crew chief. But we just do that for convenience in between flights. And of course, on the B-25, it's 3 sets of chalks. But, Yeah.
Could you give them hand signals?
So the pilot's going to tell you, the pilot should tell you switches off. Now, if you're out there at the front of the airplane, you've got somebody else with chocks, you can do that with them. But, the pilot should tell you switches are off without prompting. If he doesn't tell you that, you can say switches off, and then they'll say switches off. Normally, it's a verbal command, not a signal.
Let the pilot know the clocks are in once they're in.
Oh, yes, thank you. I forgot that. Yes, once the chocks are in, tell the pilot chocks are in, because they're going to then release the emergency brake. Yes.
Double checking on phone, on confirmation, that switches off, mags on. I had on one occasion, switches were off, the mags were not on.
Well, our standard procedure is switches off, because they turn everything off.
We run a dead back check. With the valves and stuff. Turn the mag off, make sure that that's off. The engine remote and the back. So, when you do that check, theoretically, there should not be a live mag after the thing. Need your question.
So the question was, should you hear switches off or mags off or both? All of our pilots, with one exception, and he's our steerman instructor, just say switches off. Craig Judd, we have a whole routine whole dance we go through with him. He switches off, mags off, the fuel off. But basically, the term we use is just switches off. As Dave pointed out, they've already done a idle mag grounding. So once the switches are off, there should not be a live mag. Next slide. Is that it? Okay, questions. Now one of the sessions on the ramp is we're going to actually go out by the B-25, and I'm going to give you guys a test. And we're going to see if you paid attention, and also to see what it looks like in real time. So, any other questions? Let me turn the light on so I can see. No questions? Okay, one final word. Everything you do is on social media nowadays. If you screw up, it's more likely to be on social media than if you do a good job. But a little bit of what you're doing out there, if you're launching the aircraft, is theater, right? People come out to see us fly, and they want to see a professional behavior. So, if you're going to stand out there, kind of stand at parade rest. I mean, it's okay to not stand at parade rest, but don't sit there and scratch your butt, right? Because you will for sure be on social media. And we have a lot of social media followers, and they do a lot of posts. So just be aware of that, okay?